Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 17 where I played the Ruy Lopez and we went down the main line for quite a few moves here. So let's take a look at how it goes. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. You can see all these are most common moves. Bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. And now with bishop e7 in, white doesn't have these tricks to defend the e-pawn, so he has to actually defend it with rook e1. Most commonly it's defended with rook e1. You can see there are other ideas. But this is the main line, b5, bishop b3. And now my opponent, instead of playing d6, which would continue the main line, he plays castles. And castles, if I follow up with c3, allows the Marshall Gambit. Maybe next time I get the chance I will play that too. We can see how that goes. But this game I wasn't feeling like that, so I played d3, which is one of the ways you can avoid the Marshall Gambit. So my opponent goes d6, the most common move, and now the most common move for white is c3. And what c3 does is it gives this bishop an escape square, so that when black plays knight a5 to trade off that bishop, he can just pull back down to c2. Let me draw a few arrows. So you play c3, and if the knight goes to a5, then the bishop can drop back to c2. And then you don't lose that bishop, which can be a very useful piece. You can see how strong it is already on this diagonal. And on c2, it's not as good, but it still performs a useful service supporting the center. And if these open up, then it's pointing at the king side. So it's a piece you generally want to keep. Instead, I played knight c3, so I just wasn't thinking when I played that move. It's not like it loses or anything, but takes us out of book, and it's not the best move in that position. So let's turn on the engine, and we'll follow this with the engine for a while. Yeah, in fact, I think I'll keep the engine on throughout this. It's interesting that as we play, we stay within the margin of plus or minus a few tenths of a point here, which pretty much means the game is even. It's within the range of drawing the whole way for quite a long time. So actually, for a Blitz game between two lower rated players, I mean, neither of us are masters here, it was actually quite well played, so interesting. Knight a5, knight d5, and I think the computer had a suggestion of playing some other move besides knight d5. Maybe you want to prepare it with h3 or queen e2 or bishop d2. Okay. But I went for this right away, and that allows him to trade off. I guess, oh yeah, this was the interesting point. The computer thinks knight takes e7 as an idea here, getting rid of his dark squared bishop. You can do that with check. So he doesn't have time to grab more material with this knight. So knight takes e7, queen takes e7, and then you can grab the knight down here with a takes b3. But I just took back the knight. Sometimes you can see it didn't make a huge difference in the valuation, because this pawn on d5 can be useful in exerting influence on your opponent's position, making it difficult for him to develop his pieces. But you got to hold on to that. So we're still in this range of about even, and we stay there for quite a while. See, it jumped at first, but as it looks deeper, this advantage declines. So you can see the evaluation of the computer is we're still in this range of about even. And this, of course, this queen and bishop battery, you always have to be careful. He's lined up, so if this knight moves away, there's a checkmate unless somehow this pawn is defended. So the knight could go to h4, I suppose. But this does create some pressure, as I say, on my position. I have to play carefully to avoid falling into difficulty here. But with the knight in the way, it's not going anywhere. And now he lines up on my c-pawn. And this is an interesting idea here. The computer thinks I should try c5. First of all, b3, just supporting the pawn, looks wrong somehow because this bishop is left undefended, and this pawn on b4 isn't going anywhere. So b3, although it's an alternative, doesn't appear to be that great. But c5 is an interesting idea, trying to undermine his center, and if he moves his pawn ahead, I can grab the pawn on e5 here. So c5, d takes, and what is that? Queen takes e5. Yeah, so trading that pawn for this e-pawn would be probably good for me, and also I get to set up my own threats here. So I missed that in the game. I really should have thought of that one. But I was thinking along different lines. I was trying to disrupt his queen position, which was annoying along this diagonal, and I played b5. You can see the advantage swings to black for a while here. So he takes there. So let's see. The best way for black to play this is to take with a pawn and then play queen to b6. I guess that leaves me with doubled pawns that that black can then attack and put pressure on. So that's interesting. The way he played it, I was sort of hoping he would do that, because that allows me to grab this pawn on a6, and now suddenly white has an advantage here. And these outside pawns, as the pieces get traded off, these become more and more powerful. So he takes there. He does get to disrupt my pawns, but if I can maintain my outside passed pawns here, this gives me strong hopes for the ending here. So I'm just playing a few moves, trying to hold on to those pawns, and he's trying to undermine them. And so we go along making moves that are keeping white with a slight advantage now, but not yet a winning advantage. And we get to this point, and now it's getting quite dangerous. And let's see how it goes. Yeah, so right here, after this move, bishop to c7, suddenly I have chances to win. And the way the win works is very instructive, because I was not thinking along these lines at all during the game. So let's back up first, and let's see what it says that black, to avoid these problems, should play f4 here, and you'll see that would shut down the idea, the winning idea. So after bishop c7, let's look at this line here. White plays f4, and the reason this kind of idea is hard to see is because as white, I'm thinking about my passed pawns, I'm thinking about my rook and my bishop, and how I can push these guys and maybe get the king over to help. And I'm not thinking about the king side, this other side of the board, at all. And it turns out the winning idea involves bringing pressure on the opposite side of the board from where I was playing. So after f4, what can black try? Let's say he tries g5, g6, h5. Well, g5 looks risky. Let's see if we can eliminate that. Play g5, and the pawn could take it. Then f4, bishop d2, and rook to a3. So I think the idea is just leave these pawns over here, which are actually no longer need the protection of the rook, and then go after these weak pawns over here, which are difficult for black to defend. Black tries rook a7, bishop b4, going after a center pawn, bishop to d4, bishop to a5. Now, this is one of these long computer lines. It's hard to see what's going on, I have to say. So let's try, okay, let's try this again. f4, g5, f takes g5, f4, bishop d2. That's all pretty straightforward. So bishop b6, rook a3, rook a7. So what about the idea of coming over here with the rook? Yeah, this is still good. So king e6, and rook back to c3. This puts pressure on the bishop. King to d5. His king is getting active. Rook to c8. Rook to g7, h4. f3 check, king e1. Rook back to a7. Now the score is going up. Rook a7 or king e6, either one. It looks like the plan for white is just to slowly develop. It looks like I'm working all sides of the board and trying to advance the pawns everywhere and then holding the center pawns with the king and the bishop. Wow. So even though the evaluation shifted here to being strongly in white's favor, there's no short winning plan here. That's kind of interesting. But so the way I chose to play, and the other thing that's interesting is f4 has to be played right away. So maybe the main point of f4 is to prevent black from playing f4 and chasing this bishop off this good diagonal. I played, in the game, I played b6, thinking I was going to win material here because I thought the bishop had to move. And if the bishop moves, it looks like I do win. So bishop takes b6 is the only try here. So I thought winning a bishop, I should be winning the game. And the computer says, oh, that's only basically a one-pawn advantage, which is not always enough to win. One pawn is sometimes a draw. And we continue on with this slight advantage for a few moves. He gets in, move f4, and I get down to, and then he plays king b5. And now I miss an idea here. I just retreated my rook. And this point I thought was pretty instructive too. I could play rook a5 check. And the king goes to b6. And now he's still going to win this pawn, but my rook is protected, whereas before I sort of lost a tempo by moving my rook. Now I get a tempo and I can move my king in. So I play my king up like this, and now let's say he tries like he did in the game to exchange. I can move my king to here, and his king is not in time to save his pawns. Yeah, so eventually I'm going to win these pawns. Finally, I just had to tempo a few moves to get my bishop into position to attack these guys, and he can't defend them. So that's what I was hoping for, and that would have been a pretty straightforward win. But the way I played it, I retreated my rook right away because it was under attack. And now he gets the first move. He takes, I take, he takes. And I start moving my king in with the same idea, but his king is just one step closer. And he gets there in time to keep me out of this key square. And now, if you look at the advantage over here, it's shrunk to 0.4. And so basically that means this game is a draw. That's just not enough. He has 2 extra pawns for the bishop, and I'm just going to have to sack the bishop to stop these pawns. There's no way I can win those pawns for free like I could in the other line. So these little tempos are very important. So that was a difference of 1 tempo, was the difference between a win and a loss, which is often the case in the endgame. So we play a lot of normal moves. He's just advancing his pawns very carefully, trying to convert one of them. And I'm trying to hold him at bay. And if I can ever sort of blockade the pawns and attack him with my bishop, I'm in good shape. But I never get that chance. And during the game, I thought there was one point where black had a winning chance. But if you look at the computer valuation, it turns out it's drawn all the way. But let's get to that one point and let's see why that's not winning. So I just moved my bishop to b6, and he went back with the king. So I thought he could try f2 check. So let's see how that would go. So I would go king f1, that's the only move. And now if he plays e2 check, I take f2, and if he brings the king forward, My bishop can cover the queening square. Check. Okay, so I can stop that pawn from queening, and that's a draw. And then the other try here, let's see. So that was f2 check, and that didn't work. So if he tries e2, that's another new variation. Then, yeah, I could just bring my bishop to this square, right? That's what I was thinking during the game. Yeah, and then he can't really do anything. I can just keep my bishop going back and forth. This is a typical blockade with the bishop. You got the pawns on the light squares, the bishop on the dark squares, and they can't ever get past it. So, so that's definitely a draw. I saw that. But I wasn't sure about the f2 check line, so it's interesting. That's a draw too. So he tried king e4, and now I worked out my method for drawing, which is I play my king to f1. He moves his king again, and then I can take the pawn. And when he takes back, my king steps in front of his king. And it's very important to do this in the right order. If we go back, I had this chance to do it once before here. If I take here, I will lose. Even though it looks the same, what's different is that he goes here, and it's my turn to move instead of his turn to move. I have to go in front of the pawn, and then he pushes the pawn, and it's my turn to move again, and I'm forced out. And then he steps forward, and he's going to queen. So you have to be very careful when you play that bishop takes trick. You can win this pawn and draw with the other pawn, but you have to make sure everything is lined up exactly right. So let's go forward in the game and get to that position again. Here, now it's safe to take. Because when he takes, I put my king directly opposite his king, and that's the main thing. And then we just play a few moves, but this is drawn. And if you don't know why this is a draw or how you can always hold this, you can check it out in my Chess Basics series. I cover this in one of the first 4 episodes of Chess Basics, how to draw the king and pawn versus king ending. So good game, and pretty well played for a Blitz game at this level. And I did miss my winning chance there, but it wasn't exactly an obvious oversight. So hope you guys enjoyed that, learned something from it. If you have any comments, leave them in the section below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.